Syndication Made Easy with Vinney Chopra. I'm your co-host, Alicia Dubrell. But today we have a very, very special guest, and that's Amy Wan. Am I pronouncing it right, Amy?
Yep, it's absolutely.
Awesome. So today's going to be extremely exciting. And if you're just now getting into the business, this is an interview that you want to listen to. So, Vinney, will you please tell us a little bit about Amy?
Oh, totally. Thank you, Alicia. Good morning. Good morning. And thank you, Alicia, for joining. And also Amy Wan. And you're in the closet, you just mentioned. I appreciate that. You got family and you still wanted to keep your commitment. It means a lot to us. Really. Thank you so much. So much.
Of course, thank
Guys,
you.
many of you have known Amy. She's been so active. And I would like to introduce her. Amy Wan is a partner at Sosno and Associates, a boutique securities law firm with offices in New York and California. And she's a founder. That's how I knew her. A few years back, we met right here in the summit in the San Francisco Bay Area. I live in Danville, Blackhawk, and we met there and spent some time together at that conference. She is the founder of Bootstrap Legal. Which automates the real estate syndication legal documents. And she's very innovative and creative. That's one thing which really impressed me when I saw her. She has authored the Bloomberg Law Practice Guide to ICOs, LexisNexis Private Equity Practice Guide, and hosts also the American Bar Association podcast on law and blockchain. Wow, cutting edge right
I
here.
love the blockchain part.
Yeah. Previously, she was also general counsel at a real estate crowdfunding platform. Amy founded Legal Hackers LA Law, maybe, or LA, which programs around the intersection of law and technology. There we go. Was named one of the 10 women to watch in legal technology by the American Bar Association Journal in 2014, not too long back, 6 years back, and one of the 18 millennials changing legal tech by law.com in 2018. Congratulations, Amy. That's amazing. Wow.
Thank
I love it. And was nominated as a finalist for the Corporate Council of the Year Award 2015 by LA Business Journal. Amy also has worked in international regulatory and trade policy at the U.S. Department of Commerce and was a presidential management fellow at the U.S. Department of State, U.S. Department of Transportation. She holds an LLM in public international law and London School of Economics and Political Science and a JD, the University of Southern California Gould School of Law, and a BA in Biological Science. Amy, you are superwoman. Oh my God.
I know. I wish I had half the resume you did.
Wow. From the University of South Carolina, UCLA. My daughter went to UCLA, by the way, Amy. Yeah. And she did political science over there, Monica. And she's actually in our business, fully engrossed now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. CEO decisions. She's operational vice president and just, investor relations, everything. So welcome, Amy. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I love it. I love how we're doing the interview too. I actually love the nitty gritty of it. You're in your closet. I'm in my office in my bedroom. Vinny's at home in his office.
This is the new normal.
Yes, of course. So Amy, talk to us about what made you get into the securities law?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I honestly didn't know much about securities when I was in law school. I'd never even heard of this field.
Really?
But when I was leaving the federal government and moving back to LA, I had previously had a trade in international affairs and international trade, and that just does not translate well on the West Coast. On the West Coast, the international trade work you can do is import-export compliance paperwork, but out in DC, I was negotiating free trade agreements, and it's just not the same level of work. It's all good work, just not quite really what I wanted to do. So I knew I had to look for something completely different. And my family had always been in real estate. So I happened to end up getting a job as general counsel at a real estate crowdfunding platform. And I didn't know it then, but I just, I fell into securities and specifically real estate securities law in a way where I just realized that, hey, this is actually how my brain works, and I actually really enjoy it. So I spent a couple of the years there. I spent some time after that at an existing real estate syndication firm that, all they do is real estate syndication.
Love it.
But my whole thing is just, I think I've always just been super efficiency driven, and I've always been very drawn to technology. So I found myself just questioning, how can I make this faster and more efficient? Like, why do I have to write a lot of the same documents every day?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Systems. Vinny loves systems. So
I
Yes,
love systems.
yes.
Yes.
And I had a really, and actually, so Vinny, you and I met at that summit in SF, but
Mhm.
I met another person there who's actually become, a really good friend of mine. And he
Sure.
was just getting started in syndications. And for his first syndication, he contacted me and he said, I want to raise $300,000. And I'm like, okay, so I will tell you the legal answer of what you're supposed to do. And if you don't use me, I'm not going to be offended because I know that you cannot afford the
Sure.
transactional cost of a syndication, right? Because back then, like, we just didn't do sub $1 million raises because the legal fees were so high. So I
Sure.
told him the cost, and sure enough, he went off and did it some other way.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is crazy. I actually sat down with someone from the SEC and told them, like, maybe you guys should have less compliance for people who are raising less money because
Yes.
they can't afford the
Yeah.
legal.
Right.
And the
Right.
SEC person, they had to put on the tie and the hat, and they're like, no, everyone needs to be compliant no matter how much you're raising. But I sat there and thought, like, this actually from a business perspective doesn't make sense. And so um, I talked to my firm. We're still in really good graces, but I basically left and started Bootstrap Legal. And
Yeah.
through that, I automated a lot of the first draft,
Mm-hmm.
which, it takes a significant amount of time. Um, Although, the other parts of it, the client interaction, the editing after the first draft,
True.
that's obviously still done by a human being. But
Sure.
at least much of the first draft is automated. And
Yep.
what that allows us to do is, bring down the cost.
Yep.
It allows us to get the first draft out faster, right?
Yeah.
Like, we basically do it in 3 business days.
Oh, wow.
Um,
wow, that's quick.
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't have to work so hard. And I'm
I know.
all about working smarter, not harder.
For sure. Smart, very smart, Amy. I like that. I know you really, got my attention when you said, you are trying to automate. And that's the real success is, when we are able to really be cutting edge and try to save costs. I mean, we manage our assets, all the things that we have bought, 28 syndications and so on, and we are vertically, integrated. That has really brought a lot of savings. I tell some of my investors who have been with me for 12 years, 11 years, that, hey, I think you don't pay me enough because I've saved millions of dollars in negotiating the contracts, things like that. But let me ask you, everybody's really, those new people, right? New investors and even seasoned investors, syndicators, they are really looking to get more knowledge on the SEC rules and all
Mhm.
that. So if I may ask you a question, like, could you
Sure.
tell us more about SEC subpoena means? What does that mean? And what are some ways to keep your business out of trouble with SEC?
Yeah, sure. So this is a very relevant, timely question right now,
Yes.
because we've been hearing that some syndicators in the space are receiving subpoenas, and even passive investors are receiving
Oh.
letters, right?
Why do you think
Um,
that's happening?
Huh?
Why do you think that's happening? That syndicators are being pegged out. Why do you think that that's relevant?
Well, so, I think in the past couple years, there has been a practice that has developed that's become quite popular, and it's the capital raiser methodology, right? There didn't used to be something called a capital raiser. Now there is, and people are selling real estate syndication securities like multi-level marketing, apparently. But basically, what SEC law says is that you can sell your own securities, right,
Sure.
if you're the issuer. And
Yep.
then if you have a broker-dealer license, you can sell somebody else's securities.
Right.
There's
Right.
a couple other
Oh,
nuances. For example, like you could be a registered investment advisor and start your own fund that sells your own securities, but you would then take that money and invest it in other people's real estate syndication projects. So you can do that too.
Mhm.
What you cannot do is go around selling other people's securities without a license
Right.
and be compensated for it, right?
Totally.
And that's what a lot of people have been doing over the past 2 years. And they've developed all these methods like, oh, you'll get a portion of the GP if you do this. Oh, you will get some of the acquisition fee. Oh, we're gonna say that you're involved in the syndication because you're doing investors relations. And I think someone somewhere either got really bad legal advice or just maybe, I don't know, didn't listen to legal advice. I'm not sure.
Mm.
But people really cannot be doing this. And I think it's just become so pervasive
Mhm.
that, once things get really big, the SEC starts to take notice. So I don't know if it was someone who complained or just because there's, all these people running around trying to sell real estate securities. But from what I hear, a couple of very well-known people in the space have gotten subpoenas, and their passive investors have gotten
Mm.
letters, and so that's why this issue has come up. So
Come
to
on.
answer your question, for people to keep out of trouble,
Out
they
of
need to be
trouble.
compliant
Yeah.
with SEC laws. And
Right.
one of
Totally.
the things that you need to not do is pay someone else to raise money for you. And payment
Correct.
doesn't have to be in cash. It can be, oh, I'm going to compensate you in equity. I'm going to give
Mhm.
you part of this fee. The SEC has a very broad view of what payment means, right?
Sure. Sure.
Um, and, you know, once someone gets a subpoena, I mean, they are in for many years of spending a lot of money
A lot of money. Yeah.
on
Legal
enforcement
costs.
attorneys. And
Yes.
enforcement attorneys are always more expensive than
Aha.
transactional attorneys.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wow.
Um, and it's just not a good look, because the problem is that when you do your next syndication,
Sure.
you have to actually disclose.
What
You would need
happened? Right.
Yeah, you would
Yes.
need to disclose that. Even if you think it's unmerited, you have
Mhm.
to disclose it, because, the SEC says, hey, if you want to raise money from people, you have to tell them everything that's material to the investment, right? And
Sure.
yeah.
that would include the fact that you are possibly under SEC investigation.
Got it, got it, got it. So you're right, so right. Like we do 506B with the pre-existing relationships, and so true that you have to build that base of your family, friends, acquaintances, people that you meet, and educate them yourself. And then you say, when we get a deal in the future, I would like to bring it to you. And then you can decide if you want to do it. You want to invest in it. And then, of course, 506C, where you could get only accredited investors, and that we can advertise and things
Hmm.
like that, have website, do Facebook ads or things like that. But in the first one, 506B, no advertisement, no, any kind of referring people all over the place, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
totally. Yeah, no, I've done, 28 syndications, and fortunately, I started from zero investor to one to six to eight to 13 to 22, then 80, well, no, 35, then 86. I have 168 investors,
Wow.
which they have given me millions of dollars. I mean, and
Hmm.
we have sold, so they have doubled their money, tripled their money. So when they are always looking for the next deal and the next deal, So
And
that's
that's the
no,
way to do it, to
yeah,
slowly grow, right?
slowly
But,
grow.
I,
So
I think some people lack patience and they're like, oh, I'm going to go out and find someone who already has connections.
yeah,
Yeah.
And in those cases, it becomes a little bit problematic unless they are truly your business
But
partner.
who is it problematic for? Is it for the syndicator or is it for the person that they hired?
I would say it's problematic for everybody,
everybody.
right?
Yeah,
So
I
for the
agree.
syndicator, they can end up in legal trouble for that and future syndications.
Okay.
For the person that they hire, well, that person definitely um, would be in hot
Yeah,
water.
yeah,
And
totally.
also for the investors to a certain extent, right? Because
But
just
how would they know what's going on in the back end?
the investors,
Yeah.
well, in this case, investors got letters from the SEC saying, please
Oh,
retain all information that you got from this individual.
Oh, I see.
okay.
And
Yeah,
the SEC is pretty slow to act, right? So like they could send you a letter and then you have to retain that information. You cannot destroy it. They might
sure.
come back in 2 years and be like,
Oh,
hey, we want you to send that to us right now. But
Wow, 2 years. That's a long time.
yes, but
mhm,
also, you
mhm.
know, when you're an investor in something, you sit alongside everybody else, right?
Right, right.
So maybe you might not be panicked, but hey, like shortly after the subpoena thing happened, now we're in like stay at home COVID-19, like
Yeah,
26 million people unemployed,
sure.
and other investors might start getting itchy and be like, hey, they're not giving distributions anymore. They're in
Mhm.
trouble and there's an economic crisis. I kind of want to get my money back. So
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
while you may not have any issues,
Sure.
other people might be, like, I want my money back. I lost my job. I'm having
Mhm.
a terrible time. Let me go find a plaintiff side attorney to sue this guy so I can try and get my money back.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
love what you do. I really, really love it.
Hmm.
But can you give me, because you've given so many examples and your answers are so in depth, but I do want to hear about a couple maybe examples of situations that syndicators have gotten themselves in hot water from and how you've dealt with it to, fix whatever is the issue.
Sure. So, I mean, like I said, the biggest thing by far is the capital raiser issue, right?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Um, I would say normally when people come to me wanting to raise capital for other people, what
Mhm.
we do instead is we structure it as a fund of funds. And what that means is, like I said earlier, you start your own offering, right?
Right,
You start your
right.
own fund. So you are the issuer and you're selling your own securities, right? So you go out, you raise money from people, and then you take that money and you invest it with, syndicators that you think they have really good deals. Now,
Sure.
the only difference between this and being, doing the legal paperwork for a traditional syndication is that we have to apply for something extra called an RA license or an exemption from that, right?
Uh-huh.
And for that, it really depends on, okay, how much are you raising? Because you might have to get the state one, you might have to get the federal one.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not that much more work,
I
although,
see.
definitely the cost is a little bit more. It does take a little bit longer. Um,
But it's worth it in the end.
Hmm?
yeah, because
Yeah,
then you can, like, this is really what the capital raisers should be doing, right? Um, but I'll say this, I am a transactional attorney, and
sure.
so I help people structure things correctly from the
Mhm.
beginning. When
Mhm.
syndicators get in hot water, that is not when I'm involved.
Yeah,
I
sure.
believe in hiring specialists,
Yes.
experts and not generalists. And so when people get in trouble, and my clients have not gotten in trouble, but when people get in trouble,
Sure.
Well, that's
that's
good.
that's when I refer them over to, the enforcement attorneys. And the enforcement attorneys are ones who day in, day out, the way I do transactions every day they are defending people from the SEC who have gotten subpoenas
Sure.
and enforcement actions. And
Sure.
so they are experts in negotiating settlements and defending against, administrative actions with the SEC.
They specialize in that.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
Totally.
actually,
Exactly.
Amy, I was going to ask you, can you so the transactional attorneys, there's different types of attorneys you want to hire for different things. So when it comes to the multifamily syndication world, what are the 3 or 4 different attorneys that you need to be aware of so you have those assets at your disposal?
Sure. So the most basic, I would say, is you need at least
True.
2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One is the securities attorney, whose focus is on real estate. So, for example, that's what I do, right? The other one is you need a local attorney, a local real estate attorney, to actually handle the closing and the loan, right?
Yep.
So the difference between those two is one practices securities law primarily.
Yeah, right.
Securities law is federal law, so you can actually hire any attorney in the U.S. However, for the real estate transaction side, that is state law. So you really should, you really should be hiring an attorney that is either local or through a law firm where
representation.
where one of the other people in the law firm is licensed to do business, to practice law in that state. Otherwise, it becomes the unauthorized practice of law.
So true, Amy. You're totally talking like for 12 years. I've had Milton Colgrove. I don't mind saying his name. He's been a great friend of mine right from Dallas and Colony and Carrollton. And we have worked together for 12 years now. He does all my closings and all my contracts go through him, and just a personal friend now. Then when we went to Georgia, he says, Vinney, please get a Georgia attorney because the different state and everything. Then last year we bought in Florida. So we got this, attorney there in Florida. So you're so right. Thank you for, sharing that. Also with this COVID-19 pandemic now going on, what changes are you seeing from your side when it comes to real estate syndications?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like 2008, there's definitely a lot of investor uncertainty. And therefore, I think real estate syndicators are being a little bit more hesitant in actually closing on a property. They might still be going out and trying to get things under contract, but, they're not sure if they can raise the money. And even then, closing has become a lot more difficult, right? Because you need notaries, and notaries don't really want to work. They don't want to. They want to stay at home.
I like your style, Amy.
That part is unlike 2008.
I know.
So that's probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing. I've been hearing statistics about, especially in the first, I would say in March, people were saying, 30% of transactions aren't closing. I've had folks who they reached out to me. They had properties under contract. They even had investor commitments, and then because things were happening so quickly, they would ultimately decide, hey, we're actually not going to close on this. Like all my investors are, some of them are really on the fence, and they're giving me different answers day by day.
It's got to be a scary situation for anybody investing.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So true. Also, with the lender side too, they have made some new stipulations on reserves, like having it instead of 6 to 8 months, they are saying now 12 to 14 months.
Everything's
so that's
tightening up.
Additional money as a syndicator we have to raise just to close on the same deal. And then
Right.
also with the uh, i- reduction in rent collections, my gosh,
Yes.
that's a bigger thing also. Where, I mean, April was pretty good. Our properties did
I think
92.
your main problem is going to happen in March, though, right? April,
92%,
but I'm sorry,
yeah.
May.
May rents will be big teller, but
Yeah.
then also the money has come also $1,200 checks and the other 1,200, but we'll see. But April was like 92%, 82%, Amy, in our properties that we manage. So C class got hurt more actually,
Yeah.
so we did about
But
60.
they have more money to pay the rent, don't they? Because like I pay more than $1,200 a month.
No, no, no. C class is more, worker if they are not able to get that job, so they don't have that money. See, you have money coming in because you are remotely working, right? So
Mm-hmm.
people who are remotely working, they are still making money, right?
Right.
It's with the restaurant industry and others
The
and
restaurant in
rentals, right?
Vegas got huge.
Yeah, yeah. What do you see? What more changes do you see coming down the road, Amy, in the syndication world?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We're gonna have to see how bad the economic situation gets with all this
Yeah,
COVID-19 stuff. Um, you know, I, I really do think that it may hurt the real estate syndication industry in ways where really like we didn't see in 2008. Like it's hard to even go and find a new apartment right
true.
now, right? Because it's like everyone's trying to stay at home.
Yeah.
And I think initially a lot of people thought that things would bounce back quickly after, the stay-at-home orders were lifted. But with so much unemployment and I think people, the new normal is people are going to be afraid to go out for a while. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we're going to bounce back that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I think the syndication space temporarily might slow down a bit. I think people are still waiting for the sword to fall. They don't want to catch a falling sword, and they want, and to the extent that real estate prices
Mm-hmm.
fall, they want to pick things up on the cheap,
Yeah.
a little bit later and not right
Yeah.
now. So I think a lot of people right now are kind of sitting on their hands and waiting. But, I'm optimistic that in the long term, everything will be just fine. It is just harder for people to find and do deals right now with all the uncertainty, the tighter
Mhm.
lender restrictions and everything like that.
And the investors, they're not willing necessarily to give up their money after this month. So it comes on every different aspect for a syndicator. And you kind of answered my next question because I was asked both of you, because both of you guys are very experienced in this industry. Do you see a recession or do you see depression coming on?
It's so
I know it
hard to
was a hard
say.
question, and I didn't
So
prepare Vinney for it. So
so I'll say this and take this with a grain of salt. So my husband's a physician. He's a frontline
Sure,
worker.
sure.
And I know everyone I know a lot of people are protesting to open things back up.
Yeah.
But if you study the Spanish flu of 1918 and the history behind it, actually,
Mm-hmm.
the same thing is happening. People were protesting during
Wow.
the first wave,
but they're
actually
not
in
even
San
protesting
Francisco.
with masks on.
So they were protesting stay-at-home orders. They were protesting laws that people were trying to put into place for everyone to wear a mask, right?
Wow. Yep.
And so several months later, they actually had the second wave, and the
Ah,
second wave actually ended up being far worse,
bigger.
far worse than the
Far worse.
first
Worse.
wave.
It was
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 million, right?
Yeah, to the point where people were asking the government now to pass laws requiring people to wear masks. They were
Wow.
protesting that early on, right?
Wow. Wow.
So, I think we were supposed to see the surge these past 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
although technically the number is still climbing very, very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think maybe in the net, there's a lot of political pressure for politicians in just the next month or two to start lifting the stay-at-home orders. And I think
Mm.
just over the past week, I've seen complacency. My husband drove home from the hospital the other day, and he said, like over the past couple of days, there's more cars on the road now. Like
Oh
people have
yeah.
become complacent really fast.
Give
Mm-hmm.
them an inch
Um,
and they'll take a mile.
Yeah, so I'm bracing for the second wave. I've told everyone in my office, like we're not opening for the next
No,
several months,
that's
until the
smart.
second wave is over, or we're quite sure there won't be a second wave. But because of that, you know, when it comes to syndicators finding deals, doing deals, investor uncertainty, people not paying rent, I mean, I really think this could result in a
Yeah,
something that's
recession
not
is
very good.
really, you're right. Depression, again, we'll have to see the inflationary measures and all that, but you're right. Unemployment, they're looking at 22%, I think, Here we were at 3% or 2.94%, all the way to 22.2%.
The Great
That's a
Depression was
huge,
25%
yeah,
unemployment,
20.
and we're still early on in this. People are
Yeah,
still
we are
losing
pretty,
jobs.
pretty surely. You're so right. But I think, again, at the same token, if we adhere to the rules, the distance rules, and also open slowly, I know some of the states are taking drastic steps. I hear just
And then
yesterday,
there's other states doing the opposite.
today, Georgia, they're opening a little bit. I mean, Texas, they're opening a little bit.
Texas.
But California is not. I know we are.
But I'll tell you this.
Hmm,
So, I have family in Taiwan, and whenever I FaceTime with them right now,
sure.
they're just like outside in a park, in public places, running around.
Oh,
I'm
Wow.
like, how are you guys doing this? But Taiwan has been so good at managing
ah.
this pandemic because of their experience with SARS. And
Hmm.
so it's the problem though is that it's very difficult
Hmm.
for the US to do the same thing that Taiwan has done,
Yeah.
because what Taiwan does is they track your cell
Cell
phone,
phone, I
your cell phone
heard.
I've
data,
heard
right?
about that
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And so they know who you've been in contact with. If
Wow.
you are, if you've tested positive or like been in contact with someone who tested positive, you're ordered to self quarantine. And because they know where your phone is, if if you leave your place, they know they will send someone over to find you and bring
Wow.
you back,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
That does
Wow.
not work in the
Wow.
US.
It does
People,
not work in the
No.
US. It's against all of
Privacy
our
right, it's all
laws.
about privacy. So
Privacy laws
it's
will not.
really hard
Yeah.
for us to
our
manage
civil rights
this.
doesn't allow that.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of me says, okay, I got nothing to hide, so I really don't care. But then the other side of me is like, well, wow, So because I've had these privileges my entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So true. We are so spoiled with the
Yeah.
freedom. That's what it's
Yes.
all about. We just don't want to give up our freedom. And, youth are getting in trouble. I mean, look at that. I mean, what we have seen. First, we were thinking older generation was catching on, but then we
No, there
saw
was a 41-year-old who is a
40s and yeah,
yeah, no, he had his leg amputated from the coronavirus, and he's been put into a medically induced
Oh,
coma. I heard it on the radio on my way home today
I
from getting
mean,
my
I will
CT.
tell you, my
hmm,
my husband comes home with stories every day,
ah,
and it is not just old people and the at-risk
yeah,
Yeah,
getting really sick.
it's
It's
everyone.
everyone. Yeah.
It's
yeah,
everyone. My kid has asthma. I have MS, so I'm scared to walk out the door.
sure.
But yeah, no, I heard about this on the way home. I didn't even know amputation would happen from this virus, but apparently it did in a chemically induced coma. And it's a very popular couple. I don't remember their names offhand, but the fact that that actually happened was in just in awe of me when I heard it on the radio on the way home. But Amy, what changes do you want to see coming down the road for syndications, knowing what kind of position we're in right now financially and where the country is? What changes do you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, every time some sort of economic crisis happens, the underwriting suddenly becomes really strict
Yeah,
again, right? And
Yeah.
you could probably see in the past couple of years, asset prices have been really high. The underwriting has been
hmm,
getting a little bit loose. So I think we're just tightening our belt again, and that's just the natural reaction.
so true, so very true, Amy. So I would like to see if you could help me think through. So fund of the fund is the best way, to be able to help and do your own raising with your friends and family and all, and then your fund can invest into another person syndication. Fabulous, fabulous. But I know in the past I've heard, like, sometimes they say you can make a property LLC, then a manager LLC, but then everybody in the manager general partners, they have the job to underwrite, to research, to raise money. Everybody's raising money, not just one person. That's another way also, or do you not see?
So you're basically talking about the issuer exemption. So basically, the issuer exemption says, hey, if you are part of the issuer,
Yeah.
you can raise money, right?
Okay.
And technically, you can be compensated for it. The problem is that people have taken this issuer exemption
Yeah.
to be construed very broadly, and they're like, oh, great, you can be part of the issuer and you can be part of the issuer.
Yeah.
And how
Everyone can.
yes. And so you're seeing instances where people are saying they're part of the issuer,
Yeah.
but they're not in the PPM.
Mm-hmm.
They don't already have clearly defined rules before you start raising money, right? And really, if you really dig deep into what's actually happening, it's like, okay, they're saying that they're going to underwrite because they just want to make sure it's a good enough deal.
Right.
And they're raising capital. And then afterwards they say, oh, we're doing investor relations. How many people do you actually need on a syndication? You don't actually need that many, right? And so, the way that the SEC has always looked at this is you have to be a true sponsor, which means you are involved in the day-to-day. And that does not just mean investor relations. And one of the telltale signs of this right now is, are you being compensated for the capital raise, right?
Right.
I've seen, things where people are like, oh, we'll give you a slice of the GP depending on how much you're raising. That's transaction-based compensation. That is exactly what you should not be doing.
So just say no to transactional
compensation.
Sure. Yes. Definitely. What kind of, I know there was another one. If someone wants to get hold of you, Amy, how can they, look at your services and, like to do business with you? I know the COVID is going to pass. I'm a pretty optimistic guy. Always I have been.
He's always positive.
I think in the 2008, 7 and 8 parameters were quite different, but it was more like a U recovery, right? It just dragged on in certain metro areas and it then came back up. In this case, maybe it could be like a swoosh. It went down quickly like a V, but then coming back like a Nike symbol, I say, like a swoosh. And it may not take that long. It's quite possible. So, how can people reach you?
Yeah, so they can just go on our website. It's bootstraplegal.com or jobsactlawyer.com.
Okay. Yes.
And if they want to chat, we have a little, button where you can book a quick consultation, and it's super easy.
Oh, wonderful.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Amy, for coming on the show. It's such a pleasure, and thanks for sharing your ideas. And I think all our audience will really get a lot out of it.
There's so much out of this podcast, Amy. You did a phenomenal job just explaining the nitty-gritty and the do's and don'ts and all the things that you explained to us. I think it's going to be definitely one of the top podcasts that we have. So I really appreciate your time. I know Vinney does. So guys,
thank you. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Anytime, we're going to have you again because I think you've got more information for us.
Totally. Thank you, Amy, and look forward to having coffee with you, when you're in the Bay Area or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. When we're not staying at home anymore.
I know, that's right.
All right, guys, this is Syndication Made Easy with Vinney Chopra and Amy Wan. And this is Alicia DeBrell, his co-host. And until next time, cheers.
Be sure to listen to Mr. Smiles next week with more golden nuggets and top-notch coaching tips. You can reach him by going to VinneyChopra.com or texting the word syndication to 474747. Be sure to like, comment, and share to show everyone how Mr. Smiles has brought your apartment syndication business to the next level.